Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aleya binti Rostam Affandy, metric number AN190075, and supervised by Encik Abdul Suko bin Sarif. My thesis title is Application of GIS Techniques in Detecting Flood-Prone Areas. First is background study. As the country reels from the recent torrents that flooded 8 states and killed 48 people, the question remains why Shah Alam, the capital of Malaysia-richest state Selangor, is perpetually flooded. Shah Alam is traversed by a number of rivers, including the Klang River, which is a significant waterway, as well as several smaller rivers, including Sungai Damansara, Sungai Kayu Ara, Sungai Rumpur, and Sungai Payong. And be warned that heavy rain like the deluge would cause rivers to overflow in lowland areas. The recent floods were caused by the physical landscape and months of rain falling in one day. Heavy rain led to flash floods, which caused damage to homes and vehicles in Stadium Shah Alam, specifically in Section 4, Section 9, and Section 10. Next is problem statement. The location of the study is at Shah Alam, Selangor. Selangor facing with the flood event in Selangor's history beginning in the year of 1995. Recently, the floods in Selangor are the result of a continuous rainstorm and resulted in the heaviest rainfall ever recorded. Even though various flood mitigation plans have been met across Selangor, the flood issues has yet to be resolved. Every year, we continue to hear about floods in Selangor's main divisions. The hazard had a significant impact on the life of the city's residents. Homeowners were frequently forced to flee their properties after they were inundated. Aside from disrupting transportation, some people were killed by drowning. It was found, however, that this problem could be solved by conducting detailed studies and projects in the flood plan. It is critical for planners and managers to know which areas are at risk of flooding. Next is scope of study. First is the integrated flood forecasting approach of this study was carried out in Shah Alam, Selangor, a flood-prone district in Peninsular Malaysia. Second, the scope involves the entire district in Shah Alam, Selangor with population over 400,000 people. GIS program was used particularly to produce floodplain areas, and lastly, the data that was obtained were converted to digital format. This study's aim and objective shows its significance. Hence, this is my objective of this study. First is to identify a flood susceptible region in Selangor. Second, to develop GIS database for flood susceptible region. And lastly, to prepare a flood hazard susceptible map of the flood-prone areas using Geographic Information System, which is GIS. Next is significant research. The benefits and expectations from this are the data analysis can provide the village and concerned bodies with useful information. This data can be used to educate about floods and how to prepare for them. And lastly, the flood hazard mapping section will provide the necessary information on the flood potential risk. Next is Chapter 2. This chapter focuses on recent work, which is method and results in assessing flood impacts in the country under basic components of flood analysis. The use of GIS system for mapping the flood areas were further discussed in this chapter. Next is flash floods. Flash floods are caused when inadequate drainage systems during the seasonal monsoon rain are unable to adequately channel the flow of water. This can lead to widespread flooding. Rivers that are unable to contain their water levels are often responsible for the rapid flooding that occurs in cities. In Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, sudden flooding is a very common occurrence. The city is subjected to a number of different flash floods on an annual basis. The city can be found smack dab in the middle of valley, sandwiched between the river basin of two major rivers. As a result, flooding is an unavoidable occurrence throughout the city. Flash floods can be defined in many ways, including hydrometeorological phenomena, natural disasters, and geomorphological factors. Flash floods are a rapid flood response to heavy rainfall or water discharge in small areas. Flooding over dry ground occurs within minutes to hours of a rainfall event, posing a serious threat to people and infrastructure. Over the years, and in almost every part of the world, excessive rainfall from climate change has resulted in floods that rock life and property. Flash floods are most common in locations that are rapidly developing. A sudden rise in water level, an exceptionally high water velocity, and a substantial number of debris are the defining characteristics of a flash flood. In urban areas, flash flooding is becoming a more serious problem as a result of the removal of vegetation, paving, and replacement of ground cover with impermeable surface, all of which contribute to an increase in runoff. In addition, the development of drainage systems that increase the speed of runoff makes the problem even worse. Next is flood susceptible areas. A portion of a natural or restored stormwater conveyance system that is located away from the primary channel is referred to as a flood-prone area. The floodplain, the floodways, the flood-fringe wetlands, riparian buffers, and other areas adjacent to the main channel can all be classified as flood-prone areas. However, these categories are not exclusive to one another. The Selangor government has identified over 30 flash flood-prone areas due to the continuous heavy rainfall during monsoonal season. These are all flash floods caused by problems with the internal drainage and retention ponds. The drainage plan is also old and cannot cope with weather change. The new flood-hit areas had ongoing development with retention ponds to be maintained by the developers. The city councils of Shah Alam, where floods in December affected tens of thousands of residents, is said to be closely monitoring its reservoir and pumps. River levels have risen above warning levels in parts of Kuala Lumpur and Selangor. One river is now considered dangerous due to its high elevation. Kuala Lumpur City Hall's Integrated Transport Information System reported flood waters in city center tunnels in the evening. It should be noted that flood hazard maps depict the inundation region with maximum depth and velocities at each site, whereas flood risk maps depict the estimated damage losses in the area. Next is flood implication. In flood implication, hazards associated with flooding have a negative impact, which has resulted in death, property damage, and significant repercussions for social and economic systems. The destruction of buildings and erosion, the loss of property, the contamination of food and water, the disruption of socio-economic activities like transportation and communication, and the destruction of agricultural land are all potential consequences of flood risk. There are three categories in flood implications. First is social impact. In social impact, it is possible to classify the societal effects into the following four categories, which is socio-demographic, socio-economic, socio-political, and psychosocial. There are socio-economic repercussions that resulted from how residential and resettlement assistance is managed for flood victims. The most significant impact felt following a disaster is the socio-economic impact of property loss. which causes a fall in consumption and decrease in quality of life. Next is economic impact. Flood disasters affect the economy, and it is difficult to assess their impact because they involve not only the monetary value but also the perceptions and emotions of those who are involved or who witness it. Floods have an impact on tourism, causing not only direct and indirect costs, but also damage to properties and tourist attractions. The immediate effects can be seen in subsectors that are important to the tourism industry. Apart from personal losses, floods have a significant financial impact. In December, it was estimated that flooding cost up to 20 billion ringgit measure in losses to households, private property, shops, warehouses, and factories. This is the annual average damage by state. As you can see in the annual average damage table, Peninsular Malaysia have the most higher losses, which is over 900,000 ringgit, while in Sabah Sarawak, the total losses are over 100,000 ringgit, and the total for all states are over 1 million ringgit. Last is infrastructure impact. Flooding, whether from flash floods or monsoon floods, frequently causes the closure of numerous roads in lower locations, resulting in infrastructure impact. These floods can be caused by either type of precipitation. Automobiles going through a flood-prone area may be subject to the problem of flooded or trapped vehicles. This condition will cause extreme congestion and need long hours. Flood has big impact on Malaysia's infrastructure. This occurrence causes the closure of multiple roadways, both federal and state. Next is about GIS, Geographic Information System. A geographic information system is a type of computer system that records, stores, verifies, and displays data about locations on the surface of the Earth. Geographical Information System, GIS, were developed to facilitate the manipulation of large quantities of map data and the performance of labor-intensive, costly, or inexact manual operations. Geo-information systems have converged to become a powerful tool for integrating and analyzing information from a variety of sources and presenting results in an effective and efficient way. Last for this chapter is QGIS, Quantum Geographic Information System. QGIS has evolved to the point where it is used by a broad range of users for daily spatial data viewing, editing, and analysis tasks. Because QGIS is open source and run by volunteers, it has a high level of quality control. Open source software is better because professionals and users from all over the world add to it, and all users can look at the source code, procedural algorithms, and other parts. QGIS is compatible with a variety of additional vector file formats. And last, there are a variety of plugins available, and new ones are constantly being developed. Downloadable software plugins facilitate the completion of tasks that would otherwise be challenging. Next is Chapter 3. This is my research methodology. This research approaches used to steer this investigation on the effectiveness of GIS software are described in this chapter. A significant amount of research has been carried out over the course of the past few decades in order to determine strategies for the creation of flood hazard maps. First is research approach. This investigation begins by determining the source of the problem, which was determined to be flood-prone areas. As a result, the implementation of GIS will be suggested as a means of facilitating the processing of sorted data. Using this data, we will be able to make more informed decisions, find solutions to problems, better understand performance, and enhance the procedures. In preliminary work, a preliminary investigation is going to be carried out as a part of the research before the reference parameters are declared. An initial inquiry into topics that will be included in an upcoming quality assessment or evaluation is what is known as preliminary research. Even while preliminary investigation is not conducted in all systems, they can still be utilized to draw attention to major problems that need to be resolved as part of the quality control process. The preliminary study ought to result in the establishment of an assessment committee, the selection of institutions to be studied, and the culmination of the terms of reference that will govern the investigation. Next is developing GIS-based maps. It is obvious that we will want data and information to build the best map first, which will be followed by information regarding the layers that will overlap the map. Primary and secondary data are the terms used for this type of data in GIS software. Users can glean information from maps that cannot be read from raw data. Because of this, the use of GIS mapping, which transforms data into maps, and is therefore the most effective method for presenting geographical data. And the last chapter is chapter 4, expected outcomes. This chapter explains the preliminary results of this study based on the data that will be conducted using the QGIS software. The results will be presented in accordance with the findings of this chapter. The vulnerable areas that were impacted by the flood will be identified through the course of the study. First, this study should have produced a detailed Shah Alam Selangor flood susceptibility map. Second, the developed flood susceptibility map can provide long-term early warning information on flood-prone areas to improve disaster preparedness and mitigation. And last, as a current and reliable source of flood information for the study area, this map shows all areas that are vulnerable to flooding. Thank you. That's all from me.